Hello everyone, I'm DonTheCrown, and today I want to talk about my favorite weapons in 33 Immortals, which are the Daggers of Greed. These are just really awesome. They're a fun melee weapon, and I think that they are incredibly strong right now, and they just push out so much damage. And I have two builds, which I think are going to be really easy for you to pick up and play with, and they are just very, very strong. And I just wanted to share kind of what I'm playing, what I'm doing with the game here. Now, just to get started here, let's share some gameplay clip here. Just kind of give you an idea of what we're working with here. Now, this is in a torture chamber on the second floor. As you're going to see, you're going to be able to put out some very serious damage. 8,000! So a single 8,000 hit there against an elite. And then you're also just able to snipe a lot of enemies and kind of eliminate and assassinate stuff. And it just feels so freaking amazing just to knock down a whole ton of enemies here. So in this torture chamber, for example, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. I can see there's a whole bunch of nasty ground here, and there's a whole bunch of witches that are leaving all this stuff here. And I want to get these guys knocked out of the way as fast as possible. And just watch what happens as I dive in with my takedown and just watch all of the dust following my character after what I did. Nice. That was fuck. So yeah, that's kind of the power of the build here. And just the way it kind of plays is you just play kind of normally where you build up your greed, and then you're going to kind of take a brief break from doing damage, and this gives you the opportunity to assassinate a target, and it just feels so good. Now let's talk about it real quick. So the Daggers of Greed, like I said, melee weapon. We build up this little greed bar under our feet, and you can use this either on Takedown to increase its damage. This is basically a move that does very little damage on its own when you have no greed, but it does give you an iframe as you are leaping, so it is pretty nice. It's like a second dodge in that way. And the more greed that you have, the more damage you're going to do. In baseline, you can start with 66 greed, which you'll be able to see here in a minute when I move my camera. Now, once you reach level 5 through the feat system, so you need to talk to Beatrice, get the whole bunch of this stuff done, you'll be able to start upgrading your weapon. And when you first unlock this, it's going to mostly be grayed out. Things will be locked away, kind of like the Sword of Justice is here, where I don't really have a lot of the upgrades unlocked, but here I've unlocked all of the upgrades. And when you unlock the upgrading stuff, you'll be able to start dropping these tiles and tokens, types of things. Every single run, you'll get one a run on average, I would say. I don't think I've ever gotten two, but they look kind of like this little symbol right here, and you just pick them up. You'll be able to equip them on the next run. You can also spend some of your little crystals and stuff to increase the base effect. The Dagger's base effect is just more critical strike damage, which is pretty strong, and you get about 7.5% per level. Well, this goes up to level 10, but the price does kind of get pretty high here. And then you can equip 1 to 2 of these upgrades. The second slot here does not come unlocked. You have to unlock it yourself, and it does cost 1,000 crystals and 5 of these little yellow triangle things. And so, yeah, those cost quite a bit to fully unlock your weapon here, which does kind of suck. However, let's talk about the upgrades. So first off, we have Greedier. This makes it so that we can store 33 more greed. So we go from 66 to 99, but the takedown always consumes our greed, which does kind of suck because if you miss, you just kind of lost your opportunity. The next one is Slashes or Quick Strike, makes your slashes faster after you've swung 4 times, and it continues to speed up until you reach a cap, which seems to be about twice as fast. Then we have Steadfast Power, which makes it so your attacks get stronger up to a cap, so long as you haven't dashed recently. And then we have Mortal Slashes, which makes your heavy slashes deal less damage normally, but then does a lot more damage against monsters that are on half health or lower. Next up, we have Stabs, which makes it so your light slashes deal more damage, but they hit closer to you, so less range for them. And then lastly, Patience makes it so that once your greed starts deteriorating, because you haven't spent it or built it up recently, you'll get a burst of movement speed, and your next attack will be stronger temporarily. And so what we're going to do with this is Greedier Patience for the first build. And what this does is as we build up our normal meter here, you'll see that we can drop in on it. We get 468. And so 468 damage is quite good. I'm just going to move my camera up here so you can actually see the greed building up below me. So you can see we're at 66, 468. And so I first kind of assumed that getting 33 more greed really wouldn't change that 468 number all that much. I mean, it does take longer to build up, but as you can see, it almost doubles the total damage, which is pretty fun. And yes, do note that you will start off earning very little greed per hit. You get like 1 greed per hit, but then as you continue to attack, you will get more and more greed. So filling up 99 really doesn't feel all that bad. The other thing we're going to use is patience. And what this does is once we start losing greed, we'll get a little burst of movement speed here. And our next attack will do quite a bit more damage. So 248 from about 80. So it's about tripling our damage. Where you might see where we're going with this. We're going to do this. We stop attacking. And then leap. And you see that 468 is now gone up to 1162. Now when you put them together, guess what you've got? It's kind of an assassin. And it feels pretty cool. So what we're going to do is to build up the meter. And I like to dash, wait for the bar to go down, and then jump. And you can hear the noise and you kind of get the timing down. And you can see we just hit for 2100 damage in the training ground without any relics. So just one more time. 2297. Now do note that as soon as you hear that sound is the like moment that you can start like actually doing damage with it. And so if you're in the air as you start to lose greed, that's probably the best, because if you wait around, your greed is going to go down and your takedown is going to do less damage. So you can see there, we just lost about 400-ish damage from just waiting a moment or so. So we kind of want to attack like right away. And this is just a really, really powerful combination, because lots of times you're just going to be able to like hit an enemy a little bit and you can jump to somewhere else and you can like move around and position yourself and like get the perfect little jump. And this does stun enemies pretty frequently and it just feels pretty darn safe. You can build up greed against like really anything, against enemies that like maybe aren't your priority target, and then you can leap into danger and do a lot more damage. Also, this is really great for moving around the map, because as you start to lose greed, you're gonna get that burst of speed. Then you can like tap an enemy and then gain, you know, that burst of speed again. Now note, you can use like a heavy attack to do like a pretty big burst there. So we see like hitting for like 163 here. And then goes up to like 500. So if you're not like going to jump, but you're going to like, you still want to hit the enemy, doing a heavy attack is a pretty good way to kind of like open up out of that. And that's pretty much the build here. Now, what I use for perks on this particular setup is pretty much what it's going to be for almost every dagger build, I think. First off, Renewal of Dust, I think, is just very, very strong. This gives us a lot more dust, so we can level up very, very quickly. Sometimes I can level up 2 to 3 times before getting into the very first torture chambers that open. I'll just get right in. I tend to get like 2 to 4 keys before the torture chambers open up, which maybe like you haven't seen my like guide for the game. That's kind of like my goal, to get a whole bunch of keys so we can get more relics. That's pretty much the whole point of the game, I think. And then we're using Imperial Deceptiveness. This gives us critical strike damage while our co-strike counter is above 24% or 24. I don't really think that this is super important to level up too much. Getting co-strike counter up is pretty important, but it's going to pretty much happen against bosses and elites more than anything else. And then lastly, you can put in really anything you want here, but I think that Rejuvenated Vigor is very strong. And the reason why Rejuvenated Vigor is very strong is because this doesn't seem to like take your chances of getting an epic or a rare from like 1% or 10% to 13%. It seems like maybe even at this flat, because I've had like runs where I only get rares, I get like an epic, sometimes 2. And this is just very strong for like getting some of the better relics in the game, which we can talk about relics that are important. However, this is just a very good option, I think. Now, if I had the rest of these ones unlocked, I would probably take things like Cosmic Rebirth, where we get more damage when our health is full, if I was feeling very confident. Or I would take the Morphology of Justice. which gives us more damage when our dust is full, which kind of gives us an interesting quandary when we get to the end of the ascension battles, because do you level up or do you keep your damage boost? And you probably would want to keep your damage boost unless you didn't have your attack capped out by that point, which you probably should. And so I could see this definitely being something. I'm assuming these go up to level 10, so it's going to be like 50% more damage while your dust is full. That's probably better than any level up could possibly be. So just a very strong option here. And likewise, like getting a lot more dust through this, or even a lot more rares and epics. I mean, this potentially could make it so that you can only get rares and epics, which could potentially be a bad thing. But let's talk about relics real quick. So all of these, I think, kind of are okay. And I don't really think that there is things that are necessary, like you must have for this particular build. But there are a few things that you definitely do not want. So first off, Blessed Chains here looks really good. It makes our light attacks deal more damage and our heavy attacks do less damage. This is something you cannot take in the build, and you will need to re-roll because your leap attack counts as the heavy attack. Likewise, you could potentially take Ultraris Jawbone, which does make your heavy attacks do more damage, does make your light attacks do less damage, and I think like your total damage is kind of somewhat even between the two in terms of like the total DPS throughput. So this is not really going to really make or break too much. However, if you have other things that are giving you like more heavy attack damage, that'll probably push it over. I would say that this one is pretty good, but I would rather probably have like Quicutus, Abiding Ice, or some of these other things. Like I think Burnt Cincture is a really good defensive option. Obviously, like the Lover's Skull with the 40% damage is pretty nice. And like for the most part, you don't really need to worry about too much stuff, but I would recommend the Cracked Rosary Beads. These make it so that your Coast Strikes last longer, which makes it more likely for you to be able to keep that Coast Strike up, which means that you can get your crit going. If you don't have these, having the Clerical Ceaselay, or I don't know how to say this correctly, makes it so that if you drop your Coast Strike, you're more likely to get to crit cap 100% after 25 hits pretty easily. And this is a pretty fun thing to do. Just when every number is critting, it feels pretty good. One thing to note is that generally you're not going to want to be using your co-op power later in the game really all that much. It does not give you any damage. It kind of just like takes away from you hitting enemies, and it kind of distracts your friends. And so probably want to like hold off on pressing that button. Now it does help people potentially get more bones, which could be used for heals, could be potentially used for re-rolls. So there is that benefit. However, from a straight damage perspective, it's kind of a bad thing to do. And it's definitely something you should not be doing while there are like, we must kill this type of mechanics going. Don't be popping your co-op skill during that time. You're not helping. And now the other build that I want to talk about real quick, I don't actually have any gameplay of this. However, we did do a run where one of the guys in my chat was running this build, is Quick Strike Stabs. So Quick Strike makes it so the slashes get faster, and stabs make it so the damage gets higher. So you see here we're hitting for like the low 80s, and then if we equip this, we're now hitting for like about like 110 a pop. So it's like 30 more damage there. So almost 50% more damage. The crazy part though is once you start breaking the left click on your mouse, you'll notice that every 4 hits you start attacking faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And eventually this is about as fast as it goes. This is like, I think about 400 DPS, which is a lot of damage. It is a lot more damage than the leap attack version. However, there is a big downside in that if you do anything besides continue to attack, your ramp up will go away, and this feels pretty bad there. And so if you dodge, the ramp up goes away. If you heavy attack or leap, the ramp up goes away. And so especially against enemies where like you might have to dodge something or even walk, you're gonna lose your ramp up. And so you have to either like tank hits or you have to like be very, very good at positioning, which makes this a little bit more of a high skill cap kind of skill. Now, obviously for things that you want to look for in relics here, I would highly recommend Preserved Heritage Head. makes it so that co-strikes have a chance to launch missiles. These hit for a decent amount, and you are going to be firing these things off like crazy. And then things like the Blessed Chains or the Cruel Harpy Feather give your light attacks a ton of damage. And I would even potentially say, like, you might want to wish for this, and maybe even the Sacrosanct Vernicle, which helps you give exposed. We're not really 100% sure what the different debuffs do yet. We have exposed, which I think gives us 50% more damage. Marked, I think, makes it so that you're more likely to crit. And then we have weakened, which I think makes them do less damage. Now, these are very powerful because of this thing right here, the Tusk. And the Tusk basically is going to make it so that when enemies are stunned, weak, exposed, or marked, they're going to take more damage. Now, I don't really know if this damage number is really working correctly. I think it might give you a piece of the damage for each thing that's on there. However, if you have Tusk, Sacrosanct, Blessed, and Harpy Feather, you are going to be cranking damage. And it's just really, really insane. I'd assume that you could probably get up to like 2,000 damage per swing with 100% chance to crit and just be pretty insane. However, you might want to put in like Lamp of Purifying Flames and Burnt Cincture, so you have enough health to survive tanking any of the hits that you need to tank in order to keep busting out the DPS. But yeah, even with the perks for this, I think that they're pretty much going to be looking at the same stuff as well. The more dust is going to be pretty nice for you. This gives you the ability to help max out your attack and then potentially max out your vitality as well. Note that when you go and get empathy does also boost the amount of damage that co-strikes do. So you'll be hitting the same enemy as a lot of other people, and so that will potentially boost up your damage as well. Also, Rejuvenated Vigor, you're going to want a lot of rare epic relics in this build, and so just probably going to be pretty mandatory. I think that the attack is going to be pretty nice. Even like going and getting Blissful Farewell so you can re-roll relics pretty aggressively could potentially be okay. And you could do like stuff like the damage while your dust is full, but you probably don't want to do Cosmic Rebirth because your health very unlikely to be full. Now I had seen some people talk about doing like some sort of low life build where like you get damaged dramatically and then you take the Mummified Sacred Heart. However, unless getting epic relics is going to be a lot easier later on, I don't think that being below 30% health is going to be very viable unless you have a very particular setup. If you have somebody with the sword with you so you get guaranteed shields. And so, yeah, it's probably not going to have a good time getting this particular relic consistently, so you'd be really kind of fishing for it. But yeah, those are kind of like the two builds. We have the quick attacker and the jump attacker, and hopefully they give you a lot of fun. Let me know what you guys think of the video. Should I make some more of these? I'm also been playing the bow and kind of enjoying that. I definitely have some thoughts about that. But hopefully you guys have a good time. We'll see you in soon, and yeah, have fun. Come by the stream.